Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. The ability rundown for Gwen has finally dropped, so there's no reason for us to speculate any longer. We can finally take a look at her kit. Obviously this has been out for a while, but I will be going through this and generally talking about where I think Gwen is going to fit into the meta and how well I think she can perform, given what we know about her kit. Now, let's go ahead and do an ability by ability breakdown here, as that's usually the best way to get a sense for where a character is at. Gwen's passive is 1,000 cuts. Her basic attacks deal bonus on hit magic damage based on a percentage of her enemy's maximum health, and basic attacks against champions heal her for some of the damage dealt. I believe the damage, or the healing, is based on the bonus damage she gets from her passive and not from the value of the auto attack itself, so you won't be able to build lifesteal and double dip in that regard. Generally, though, this makes a lot of sense. It does set up Gwen as a bit of a foil to Viego, who has a very similar ability on his Q, and it does mean that she has some degree of target agnostic damage. This makes sense given that she's intended to be a skirmisher, and skirmishers should be able to basically hit whomever they want. They should never have to pick and choose and say, I can only go for squishies. Essentially, no one is safe from skirmishers' attacks, so it makes sense for her to have some degree of percent max health damage in her kit someplace. It does still, however, mean that magic resistance is going to be very valuable against her, as it does negate some of that bonus magic damage regardless of it based on maximum health. So it makes a lot of sense, no real surprises there, and this is the only form of sustain in Gwen's kit. The rest of her kit she will have to play very defensively and make the most of her defensive abilities to keep herself alive. Her Q here is called Snip Snip. She snips her scissors between 2 and 6 times, dealing magic damage in a cone. At minimum, she snips twice, and she adds one snip per basic attack she's landed on an enemy, up to 4 for a total of 6. Enemies in the center of each snip take true damage, as well as the bonus magic damage from 1,000 cuts. Now, this ability has a very low cooldown, having already seen it on PvE. It's like a 3-second cooldown at max rank. I'm really hoping Gwen is a mana champion, because otherwise I do feel like she can just run away with games given her ability to just spam her abilities off cooldown without needing to worry about things like resources. So I'm hoping Riot have learned from some of their more recent releases. I'm hoping they remember mana is a thing in their game, but we'll see. I actually don't remember now if she is or if she isn't, but either way, this is going to be Gwen's bread and butter. This is going to be the majority of her damage. Now, it is dependent on her landing auto attacks on her enemies in order to get maximum value. It does come out quite quick. Obviously, enemies can sort of sidestep to avoid the true damage and the bonus damage from 1,000 cuts, but just the fact that Gwen is able to really quickly rack up a ton of damage, especially if an enemy is CC'd or otherwise unable to escape from the center of the AoE, it really means Gwen can lay on some pain, especially given that it will be true damage, and apply the bonus damage from 1,000 cuts, which is percent max health damage, so that's a bunch of percent damage that she's doing in a very short amount of time. However, in order to get maximum value, it does mean she has to stay in combat for quite some time in order to actually get maximum value. So this is not going to be an ability that Gwen will be able to just kind of spam at you, because she'll only get those 2 snips. Otherwise, if you're able to sort of open with a Q, dash around, get a couple of auto attacks off on an enemy, and then go for a bigger snip, you can really get some damage down on people. So I do quite like it, and Gwen really is summed up by her passive best. She is death by 1,000 cuts. Gwen is very rarely going to hit you once and do a lot of damage. She's going to hit you 800 times, and eventually you're going to die. So I do like where this is at, and you'll see this again on her ultimate as well. It's all about Gwen essentially stacking that percent health damage in order to do as much as possible. Gwen's W is Hallowed Mist. This is not her ultimate, but it also is significantly worse than we initially expected. She spins a Hallowed Mist to surround her for 5 seconds, gaining armor and magic resistance when in it, and enemies outside the mist can't target Gwen or hit her with any abilities. The mist will move to follow Gwen the first time she tries to leave it, but it dissipates the next time. She can also activate this on her own to reposition it and bring it to her location. So this ability is very strong. Now, it's unclear because this wording says essentially that she cannot be hit by anything, and the video we have here kind of shows the same thing, but the actual tooltip in-game is just displaying that Gwen just can't be targeted, which means that it would have the similar counterplay to Akali Shroud, where even if you can't see her, you can spam AoE into the area of effect and hit her regardless. So I'm not sure if which is the case. I will have to get on PvE to test that out. Either way, this is a very powerful ability, but less powerful than you might think. If someone like a Garen is running down Gwen, she can press W in order to gain the bonus resistances, which certainly will help, but it won't actually protect her from Garen hitting her with a Q and then spinning, because he's in the AoE with her, and there's nothing she can do about it at that point, right? Whereas this ability is a lot more of a sort of riposte for an enemy trying to initiate on Gwen as she's trying to make a play happen, or if they're trying to make a play onto her. So for example, an enemy Thresh tries to flash hook you, and you're able to pop your W beforehand, the hook just passes right through you like you're not there because it can't hit you. That sort of a thing is where this is going to be good at, but it's not going to protect you from things like Z-ult coming through, from things like a Garen running you down. So in that regard, really this is a way for Gwen to counter long-ranged poke and long-ranged harass and give her the option of finally being able to close the gap and make a play happen. So in that regard, it is still a very powerful tool, but also it's not like the strongest thing at Gwen's disposal. I wouldn't say it's as powerful as the AoE Black Shield that we initially thought it was, especially given that it only affects Gwen. So generally speaking, this ability could be fine, but I would definitely keep my eye on it to find out exactly how it works, as if it is the way they have got it in this video, where you can't even affect Gwen while she's in the AoE. That makes it very, very strong. Now, this is a once per team fight ability, as it's a 14-second cooldown at max rank, I believe. So, generally speaking, I'm not that concerned about it, but it's still going to be quite good, and this is going to be the cooldown you're going to want to pay attention to while trying to fight Gwen. Gwen's E is skip and slash. She dashes a short distance and empowers her attacks with increased range, speed, and on-hit magic damage for 4 seconds. Attacking an enemy during this time refunds 50% of the ability's cooldown. This basically means that if she dashes, and then she hits an enemy right afterwards, she gets a bunch of the cooldown back and can then dash again. This is Gwen's primary steroid. Again, Gwen is all about death by 1,000 cuts. I can see a combo of Gwen being essentially E in, use her initial snip in order to get some damage down, use the bonus on hit, or the bonus attack speed and range and on hit magic damage to kind of rack up some stacks, and then go for a final snip on the enemy for a bunch of damage because she'll have the maximum 6. So this is an interesting ability. It's sort of a glue ability for Gwen, as skirmishers basically always live and die by their mobility, and this does give Gwen a free targeted dash. No word yet as if it goes over walls, but I'm assuming it does, which does give her sort of the ability like Fiora to have a little bit of out of combat movement, but because she has to hit somebody to refund the cooldown on this ability, it does mean that she has to be at least somewhat involved in combat to really get skip and slash going and dash back and forth. The cooldown on this is fairly low if you're getting the 50% reduction. Otherwise, it's a fairly lengthy cooldown, so it is incentivizing Gwen to use it aggressively. So now, again, this is all about death by 1,000 cuts, bonus attack speed, bonus on-hit magic damage to go with her on-hit magic damage from her passive. Gwen is going to want to stay in fights for essentially as long as she can, which is already making me think Riftmaker might be a good idea on Gwen, as it gives her more healing, it gives her more ability to hang in a fight for longer, a little bit more durability. I can see it being a very powerful item on her, but it also means that she synergizes okay with attack speed, so maybe there's a cheesy on-hit Gwen build out there. We'll have to see. Finally, Gwen's R is Needlework. She can cast it up to 3 times, but she has to hit an enemy within 8 seconds to unlock each subsequent cast. Every cast fires needles in a line that deal magic damage, slow enemies, and apply 1,000 cuts bonus magic damage. The first cast fires 1 needle, the second will fire 3, and the final will fire 5, for a total of 9 needles and 9 applications of 1,000 cuts to enemies hit. In case it wasn't clear, Gwen will kill you with a million different sources of damage that all do approximately 8 damage, right? That's exactly what this ability is essentially intended to do. The reset mechanics aren't entirely clear to me. It looks like all Gwen has to do is just hit an enemy champion, even if she's missed the initial needle. We can actually see that in her gameplay trailer where she misses the initial needle on Riven, but she's still able to recast the ability later. So it does look like if essentially Gwen has to be able to hit you to get the recast, but it doesn't have to be the R itself that she hits you with. It just has to be anything. So in general, though, this means that Gwen has a decent amount of counterplay. If she misses the initial needle, then she kind of has to work a little bit harder for the resets and get more damage off. It also means that her damage is going to be significantly lessened, given that she's hit you with fewer needles. But it also means that if Gwen hits the first needle, she can immediately fire the 3 needles, and then can immediately fire the 5 needles if those hit. So again, it really allows Gwen to do a ton of damage all at once. This is also AoE, along with her needle, or her scissors, so Gwen can really get some damage down on enemy champions if she's able to start landing all of her abilities. It definitely means that if she has someone to set her up, she's going to do really, really well. But setup is going to be the biggest thing for this champion. She doesn't have much of a way to start a play on her own, given her lack of crowd control at all. And given the fact that Hallowed Mist is a fairly defensive spell, it doesn't do a whole lot for her. She can take it with her once, but if the enemies are able to enter the AoE, then you're sort of, you know, you're not really able to do much. It doesn't do much for you after that point. So Really, that leaves Gwen's only way in as skip and slash, which naturally is a good way in, as you do want to be dashing in order to get the hit and get the cooldown reset and then maybe dash back out afterwards. But without crowd control, without really any easy way in, Gwen is going to be at the behest of her team to set her up, either champions landing hooks, tanks going in, something along those lines, but it's going to have to be somebody else enabling Gwen because she's not going to be able to do much on her own, which I do quite like, and a lot of skirmishers are sort of like this, but even thinking about skirmishers like Master Yi, who has Highlander and Alpha Strike to kind of enable himself to run in, Gwen doesn't really have that. She has one short range dash, and that's it. Maybe she can follow you while throwing needles at you, but just taking the R damage is not going to be a crazy amount of damage, so really, I don't see how this champion gets in without team setup. It does feel like this champion is going to struggle a little bit in the top lane. Naturally, she does have a bunch of target agnostic damage, so she doesn't care if she fights bruisers, but it also, I would guess she's a fairly squishy champion, which does mean that someone like a Garen running her down or someone like a Darius pulling her in are just going to do a ton of damage to her, and there's not really much she can do. She can press W, but unfortunately, it will only give her the bonus resistances. She's still going to take damage from those champions because they'll be in the AoE, so I feel like this champion is actually going to be better off in the mid lane, where as long as her wave clear is decent, which I don't know how Snip is going to work against minions, but you can definitely set up those minions to tank all of the damage. And especially this description here says it's just a basic attack she's landed on an enemy, which means that she can kind of hit the front row of minions stacking up and then do one big snip to clear out the entire wave, hitting everyone with the true damage. So there is sort of the possibility for a mid lane Gwen. I would expect to see her there or potentially in the jungle rather than in top lane, because I just don't think she's going to have very good matchups into any of the top laners that I'm imagining. Maybe as sort of a counter to like a cheese pick top lane, something like a Quinn or a Vayne, maybe you can play Gwen into that because you do have the ability of sort of negating a bunch of their burst by pressing W. You have the ability to close the gap, get some damage off on them, but I don't really see her functioning very well against a lot of the other melee champions top. But again, we'll have to see. I may be undervaluing some parts of her kit, so you know, that's sort of up in the air. Build-wise, she is an AP character, so she does want to be building sort of the AP bruiser itemization or the AP burst itemization. I feel like she's going to want to build a lot of the percent health damage items, especially things like Demonic Embrace, as it's not synergizing super well with her because she is kind of doing a bunch of damage all at the same time, but each individual hit will refresh the buff, so maybe there's some things to be considered there. Her AP scalings will probably be pretty bad, given that she does so much percent health damage, so in a similar boat to Lilia. Lilia doesn't really stack AP, she's not a death cap builder, so it's definitely going to be a similar case with Gwen here, because she just doesn't have the ability to stack that up. So again, super interesting character design here, though. I'm really excited to see how she's going to perform on the Rift and what sort of compositions she's going to be good in. But let me know what you guys are thinking of Gwen's full kit reveal down in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Especially let me know if she is manaless, because that changes a lot of things for this character. She gets really, really silly if she's manaless. But again, I'll have to take a look at that. But let me know what you guys think of Gwen down in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. There will be a patch notes rundown uploaded just after this, so stay tuned for that. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.